Hey gang, Coach Bruce Babashan here, aka Your Corner Man, and I want to thank you for joining me for today's video. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I've been a professional boxing coach and trainer for some 20 years. Over that time, I've had the honor and the privilege to coach some pretty amazing athletes, including helping prepare the 2016 Philippine Olympic team, two-time national, international, intercontinental champion Alexandru Marin from Romania, and two-time world champion Jennifer Salinas from Bolivia. When I'm not working with the fighters, I also work with NFL players and athletes from a variety of sports, helping them work on their mindset and their behaviors, and helping them develop the keys to develop repeatable, elite-level results. Now, when I'm not in the ring or with the other athletes, I work with business professionals, and I teach them the exact same mindsets and behaviors that produce elite-level results in the ring. I teach it to my business clients so they can be better, more courageous leaders, build deeper, more meaningful relationships with their team, and produce highly effective and repeatable results over and over and over again. Besides that, I'm also a high school football coach, a professional motivational speaker, a successful small business owner, and a former senior level corporate executive. And I bring all of those life experiences to everything I teach, to my fighters, to my athletes, and to my business clients as well. Now, let me also say right here that I realize that I'm not for everybody and that boxing isn't for everybody. I know boxing is a hard sport, but for me, boxing and life are the same thing. They're a fight, and I want to win. I'm about doing your best. I'm about coming out on top. This video is about a concept I use to prepare my fighters for upcoming bouts so we can come out on top. It's called the 6 ways to win every fight. And to me, I think that boxing is the perfect metaphor for teaching, and the boxing ring is the perfect proving ground for ideas and concepts of peak performance and human courage and behavior. Now, this video is about the method I developed over the past 20 years called the 6 ways to win every fight. It's something I developed over time. It didn't come easy. It was difficult. I had trial and error. I had many successes and many failures with it, quite honestly, but it's something I use today. And here's the best part for you. It's simple. It's easy to use. It can have an immediate impact on you, and kids travel from around the world to get it because it works. So sit back and join me on this video about the 6 ways to win every fight. You know, when I started coaching, I wasn't a very good coach. I had an idea about what I wanted to do with my fighters, but I really didn't have a plan or a system for preparation. And I knew I needed one. Quite simply, the 6 ways to win a fight is a framework for victory that I didn't have when I was a young coach. I was sloppy and unprofessional, but I wanted to be better, so I set out to develop my own system. I looked around. I coached high school football, so I knew there were ways to game plan, but I wanted to develop something that was special for fighting and special to me. And so I set out on my journey. And to be honest with you, after a period of time, I threw myself into it, and I developed something that was so complex that nobody could use it, including me. And then I knew I needed to hone it and whittle it down to something more simple. And then I had a little epiphany. I was watching TV and I heard someone say this, that brilliant isn't making the simple complex, it's making the complex simple. And I decided to focus on simple. And that really sort of set me forward. That really allowed me to make a quantum leap in my game. And I developed soon after the 6 ways to win every fight. Now, I'm going to explain what the 6 ways are. It's the method that I use to develop my fighters, and it consists of 3 different things. 1, it consists of 6 elements that by themselves can determine the outcome of any competition. It also consists of 3 other elements I call the major influencers. These 3 elements cannot by themselves determine the outcome, but they can influence the outcome. And then there's the 1 big intangible. And this element cannot determine the outcome by itself, but it amplifies and magnifies all of the other elements. So let me share with you now the 6 ways to win a fight. Number 1 is skill. Number 2 is will. Number 3 is talent. Number 4 is conditioning. Number 5 are tactics. And number 6, strategy. What are the 3 big influencers? Number 1, preparation. Number 2, execution. Number 3, imagination. And what is the one big intangible? And that's your heart. What you believe is possible. But I do want to talk about each one of those individual elements now going forward, so you have a good idea and a good grasp of the 10 basic elements that go into this system. And then we'll talk about how to score these things at a later date. That gets a little more complex and that involves more analysis, and that's really the heart of it. But first, let's talk about the 10 elements so you're clear and you fully understand the 10 elements that are going to determine the outcome of every single fight or competition. All right, so let's start talking about the elements now individually. The first one being skill. What is a skill? Well, to me, it has 3 criteria. 1, it has to be able to be labeled and identified. 2, it has to be absolutely directly relevant to the competition or fight that we're in. And 3, it has to be something that can be improved upon with proper practice and repetition. If it has those 3 elements, it's relevant to what we're doing. It can be labeled and identified, and it can be improved through proper practice and repetition. That is skill. Your skill can win any fight or competition. There's a thing in my sport that says what? Skills pay the bills. You hear it in all things. You hear it in boxing, you hear it in basketball, you hear it in football. Skills pay the bills. Skill is the number 1 element. Now, the second of the 6 elements is will. And, you know, wills, we often use the words like fortitude and perseverance and grit. We substitute those words for will, and that's accurate. But will can mean many things, and it does to me. You know, certainly, do you have the will to struggle? Do you have the will to work through the pain? But also, do you have the will to be patient? Do you have the will to be calm? Do you have the will to be still? Does it mean just suffering? But will means many things. Will means, do you have the will to do what is required? Now, when it comes to suffering, I have a favorite story I like to tell my fighters. It's about a runner named Steve Prefontaine. And he was a great runner in the 1970s. And there was a reporter interviewing Steve Prefontaine, and the reporter asked him a question, said, you know, Steve, you don't have any of the obvious physical characteristics of a great runner. What makes you so great? And Prefontaine said, I'm willing to suffer more than anyone else. In fact, Prefontaine used to wait till that moment when the other runners got in their own head and they had to negotiate with themselves. Am I willing to go on? Am I willing to suffer more? And that's when Prefontaine would turn on the gas. So yes, suffering is a huge component piece to it, but by itself, will can determine the outcome of a race, will can determine the outcome of a fight, and will can determine the outcome of a competition. So the third element is talent. And these are the things that are gifted to you. These are the predispositions and your abilities that are gifted to you at birth. They can be anything. They can be physical, they can be mental. The truth is that we're all given a certain range of talents in everything. Some of us just more than others. And the truth is also that talents can be developed, but only on a marginal basis. You can't take a slow guy and make him fast. Okay? Speed is a talent. Power is a talent. You can improve upon talent with proper practice, but talent by itself is given. IQ is a talent. Specific IQ, sport IQ, fight IQ, these things that are gifted to you that can be developed, but only marginally. These things can determine by themselves the outcome of any event. You know, in coaching, we have a saying, you can coach against everything but talent. You can put your best game plan together. You can put your best man on man. You can give them the best tactics, the best skill, the best strategies. But sometimes talent prevails and there's nothing you can do about it. Talent alone can win a fight. Talent alone can win a competition. But if you don't have talent, you have to offset it. If you have talent, you have to develop it. And the number 4 element is conditioning. And when I say conditioning, I mean both physical and mental conditioning. How mentally prepared are you for competition? Are you mentally rugged and durable? Are you prepared for the competition ahead? Okay. I also mean physical conditioning. You know, have you done the work? Are you physically prepared for whatever sport it happens to be or event it happens to be? You know, some events have short duration, some have long, some are, you know, focused on power, some are focused on whatever it happens to be. Have you done the physical conditioning? Are you in the condition you need to win a fight? Oftentimes, conditioning alone, all things being equal, sometimes you can just outlast people. Sometimes you can just outlast them. And they may have more skill than you. They may have more ability than you. They may have more will than you. They may have better tactics and a better strategy. But eventually, they fade. They give in. They're unable because their conditioning wasn't good enough. Sometimes you can just outlast people. Conditioning alone can win you a fight, a competition, or a contract. The number 5 element of the 6 is tactics. Now, defined tactics is very simple. It's the means by which you plan on executing your overall strategy. So let me give you an example. Our strategy for this particular fight, let's say, is to take him into the deep water. That means to the back half of the fight, to the late rounds. That's our strategy. That's where we feel we have the greatest competition. We call that the deep water because that's when the fighter's feet leave the bottom. And we're going to find out whether he's got the will and the conditioning and whether his skills and his techniques will hold up at that point. But our strategy is to get him to the back half. The techniques that we use during the fight to pull that other fighter into the back half of the fight. That means that we may not engage in a lot of back and forth. That means we may have to run a little bit. We have to stay out of making sure we don't get hit by the big shot. We want to try and pull them into the back half of the fight. We want to slowly and methodically drain their energy through a variety of ways of slipping and moving in and out, right? These are the tactics that we're going to use to execute on our overall strategy. Tactics alone can determine the outcome of any fight or competition. And the number 6 is strategy. Now, this is where the coach must get involved because this is the overarching game plan for victory. Now, if you have a crappy strategy, you can put it all together. You can have all kinds of talent, you can have all kinds of tactics, but if your strategy is flawed, you can be beat. But if your strategy is right, your strategy can be the thing alone that causes and determines the outcome. Now, if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a complex or serious strategy, if you don't have a strategy A and a plan B, then you're not doing a very good job as a coach. You're not doing a very good job as a leader. Whatever your strategy is, your overarching plan, it's your job and responsibility to make sure that that athlete or your employees know what the tactics are that they need to use to employ to make that strategy happen. But the strategy for war, the strategy for competition can be the only thing that determines the outcome. Well, sometimes strategy can outdo all the other elements. But you have to be a brilliant strategist and you have to spend time. But strategy alone can determine the outcome of any fight or competition. So those are the big 6. Each one of those individually can determine the outcome of any fight or competition. Now let's quickly talk about the big 3 influencers. And I'm not going to go into tremendous depth on each, but I am going to discuss them real briefly. And the first one being preparation. Now, how much energy and time are you going to give to preparing for your competition or event or your contract? If you're not willing to know your competition, if you're not willing to plan, if you're not willing to know your capabilities, and you're not willing to put together a game plan and a strategy, then quite frankly, you don't deserve to win. Okay? Even though this does not determine the outcome by itself, your failure to prepare will have a major influence on the outcome. So preparation is number 1. You must prepare. Number 2, execution. Can you dance when the big lights come on? When it's your time to perform, can you get it done? When your name is called, can you execute on what's been provided for you? That's number 2 in execution, the 3 big influencers. And number 3 is imagination. And imagination is, can you expand on or create opportunities within the fight itself or within the competition itself that give you a greater opportunity for victory? Those are the 3 big influencers. And the number 1, the big intangible, is what you believe. I cannot express to you the power of belief. Any coach who's been in sports long enough knows that belief is probably the strongest force in human nature and human performance. Sometimes in fighting, physics can separate you from your desire. A punch placed in the right spot will separate you from everything you've ever, no matter how much will and belief you have, physics works. But what you believe in any competition will have a marked effect, and it amplifies everything else you do. So belief, what you believe. And the greatest fights, of course, are when everybody believes, when both sides believe they're going to win, when both sides have skill, both sides have will, both sides have talent, both sides are in condition, both sides are ready with tactics, and both sides have a great strategy for game plan. Both sides have prepared for the fight. Both sides have tremendous imagination, and both sides can execute. When the big lights come on, both sides can dance, and both believe they're going to win. That's when you got something. So there you have it, the 6 ways to win every fight. Now, to use the system, you have to understand the scoring system, and I can get into that with you at a later time. But the scoring system allows you to sort of assess your athlete, your situation, assess the competition, and then to overlay those on top of one another, and you will instantly see where your vulnerabilities are and where your opportunities are, the things you need to improve upon and the things you can take advantage of. It's also a tremendous self-assessment tool. It'll raise your personal self-awareness. You know, to be a leader, to be a great leader, you have to be self-aware. And a tool like this, where you can instantly look at what you're strong at and instantly face what you're not so strong at, can have a marked effect if you're willing to grow and learn. So there you have it, the 6 ways to win every fight. If you're interested in learning more, please go to my website, www.yourcornerman.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel at the button below. I also have a podcast, www.yourcornerman.com/podcast. Go check that out. It's been my pleasure. I'm Coach Bruce Babashan, aka Your Corner Man, and this has been the 6 ways to win any fight.